Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, and this is Annie255, and this is part 2 of our BiFrost series, where we're going to get you started with the simulation part. So we've got the scene all set up. So the next thing we're going to do is get everything started. Now my glass looks a little different because I went ahead and added an AI standard surface shader. That's the only thing I made changes to. So you can see that I've clicked on it, and I added the preset, which is the glass, and replaced it. Okay, that's all I did with this scene. And the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and get the simulation started. Okay, go ahead and select the sphere, and we got to make sure that we have BiFrost fluids showing. If you click on FX and you don't see BiFrost fluids up here, then you need to go ahead and load the plugin. So go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager. It's about halfway down, I believe. It's right here. So BiFrost, BiFrost Graph, BiFrost Shell, BiFrost Plugin. Make sure all of those are activated. And then click on Refresh. And then go ahead and close it. Okay, when that's all finished, now you should be able to see BiFrost fluids. Make sure you are in FX. Okay. Alright, so select the sphere. That's going to be your emitter. Go to BiFrost fluids and click on liquid. You'll notice right away that we have what looks like little droplets or little particles that are surrounding the sphere, the emitter. So that's going to, and it also creates a couple of nodes here. It's very complex. We've got the liquid node. We've got the liquid properties node here. You can see I've got my my attribute editor open, so you can see that and you can just Control A back and forth between the shelf or between the channel editor and the attribute editor. Okay. All right. So if you want to see things in more detail, you want to go into the attribute editor. If you don't want to see, if you just want to see kind of a quick overview of what's in the shell, then you can do the channel editor. But normally I want to change things in the attribute editor. So we've got the gravity magnitude in here as well, gravity direction. This is very important for the scale, and you're going to see that this will change as we work, as we tweak things out. Okay, we've got our basically our resolution, how accurate the simulation will be in here. This I'm going to keep it defaulted, but these step systems add more accuracy, but will slow you way down. Okay, all right. So we're going to go ahead and you can use any mesh that you want as a kill zone that will kill the particles off immediately. So you can activate that if you'd like to use that. We're gonna go ahead and have a table to kind of collect all the pieces. We want them to just flow over the surface. Okay, just like water would. All right. So now we've got the actual fluid dynamics ready to go. We just need to have it actually collecting something. So we're going to use the glass. So what I need to do is we're going to need to make sure the liquid, the BiFrost liquid, is selected, and then the glass is selected. Alright, let's see what we got so far. For some reason I just lost my, there it is, found it. Alright, I lost my little cube here. So select the BiFrost liquid and then shift select the glass, and then go into BiFrost fluids and go into collider. Now we want to do the same thing to the table. Okay, so we're going to click on the BiFrost liquid, shift select the table, and go into BiFrost liquids and collider. Okay. Alright, so it's simulating right now as we speak, believe it or not. So I'm going to turn that off for now. This is basically our cache right here. Okay, and when I right click over it, you can see we have evaluation cache, which is on. We've got viewport software cache, viewport hardware cache. We're not worried about those two right now. Flush cache, which we're going to use a lot. If something goes wrong or you don't see something that's right, you want to flush your cache and try it again. And then we have our cache playback preferences and color preferences. Now you can also get this as well under the Playblast, the timeline, I'm sorry. And that's under cache playback. Now you can see that cache playback is not on, so these are all grayed out. Okay. If I click on this, you can see if I click back on this, they're all open again. Okay, and we can flush the cache this way too as well. So there's two ways we can get to it. It's a little easier this way. Okay. So we have our liquid, and if we look at our liquid, we have display, particles, and voxels. We're using particles right now because it runs faster. This claims that right now it's showing 1,000,000 particles, particle display count. You can turn that down to 100 if you wanted to, but I didn't see a real change in the speed that it really runs at. It runs a little faster, but not a lot. So this doesn't have anything to do with how it's going to render, right? It just has to do with your display, what you're seeing. Okay, so turn that down if you're running really, really slow. If you have a laptop and you just cannot run at all, go ahead and turn that down, and then you can crank it back up before you do a render or something. But it really doesn't matter. This is just kind of like Paint Effects, where I can turn the display and it looks really raggedy, you know. Doesn't look it looks kind of dismal, but when you render it, it'll render fine. Okay. Alright, and then point size is how large those points will be. So if I type in like 10 or something crazy like that, you can really see them at this point, you know, now. It's very easy to see. It's really up to you how you want to display these. Sometimes people like that, and you can sure turn that up. It has nothing to do with what the end result render will look like. This is just display. Okay. With that said, okay, then what we want to do is we want to now watch it and have it hit the bottom. Now the thing is, what you're seeing now is that we just see one ball of water come down, which is not what we want. So we need to do a continuous emission from here. Okay, so where do we find that? Well, it would be under emitter, wouldn't it? So we're going to find BiFrost emitter props, and in here you can see that we have continuous emission. Now why they would not have that on by default, I have no idea. That sounds a little bit crazy to me not to have it on, but so that's, just remember that, write that down. That's always hard to remember, but turn that on and we should be good to go. So let's go ahead. We want to change this from 120 to 400 frames. So go ahead and go from the beginning and just go ahead and play it out and see what we get. And we see it colliding with the glass. And don't worry about if you have a couple particles that are just kind of flying out a little bit. That's okay. And I'm gonna just pause this real quick, come back when I'm done. Okay, I stopped the simulation right here. It's really hard to tell what's going on with this, so let me go back to the liquid, and let's go ahead and I'm gonna go back to point size to be 1 where I had it before, and I'm gonna bring this back up to 100,000, let's say. There we go. And you can see that it's a little easier to tell what's happening. And you can see the water actually overflowing, and I don't really want that simulation. I'm at 239. It took a while. It will take a long time to simulate. So again, it's like watching paint dry. It's not a whole lot of fun. So at frame 180, I want it to stop. I want the water to stop coming out. Let's say it's a faucet. You just want to turn the faucet off, okay? So let's go ahead and go back. Let's flush the simulation, flush the cache, and I want to turn that off. I don't want it to keep calculating while I'm trying to do stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the attributes for the emitter. So I'm going to click on BiFrost emitter props. I'm going to do a Control A, and for this I'm going to go in to let's see here. We want to turn it on and off. Okay, so this is what we need to animate, the continuous emission. So we want it to stop. We could stop it and start it by keyframing this. Okay, if we want it off, we can definitely just type that in, off, hit enter, and we could keyframe that. Okay, that would be keyframed off on frame 1, and if we want to turn the faucet on at frame 60, we could turn that back on. Okay, but we want the opposite. We want it on. We don't need to turn it on because it's going to look like it's been turned on. Okay, it's going to start from the sphere and just kind of fall down into the glass. We want to be able to turn it off. That's the key. So let's turn that back on. We want it on, and we want it on at frame 1. Okay. All right. So at frame 1, we would like that on. Okay. So BiFrost. Where's that at again? I lost it here. Continuous emission right there. So that needs to be on. There we go. Alright, so it's on. So at frame 1, make sure at frame 1, and then right click over it and go to key selected. And then I'm going to go to frame 179 and right click over it and go key selected. Okay. Now if I don't have these two keyframes with it on, what's going to happen is if I were to go and turn this off at 179, what would happen is about halfway through it would probably turn off. Okay? It wouldn't like subtly go off, maybe it would, but a lot of times it would just go off. So we don't want that. We want to have it stay on until frame 179. And then we want to move one frame up to 180, and we want to turn that off now. So we're just going to type in off. And then click on BiFrost continuous emission and right click over it and go to key selected. Alright, so we have it on at frame 1, we have it on until frame 179, and then 180 we turned it off. So it shouldn't fill the glass entirely up now. So let's give it a shot. I have to turn the continuous cache on. So we're going to turn that on, go to the beginning, and we'll go ahead and play the simulation. And this time I'm going to go ahead and pause it, and I'll come back when it's all finished. Okay, back again. You can see that it turned off at 179, and now it's just kind of gonna stop, and that's kind of where I want it to be with the glass. We don't want it spilling all over the place, and so once it fills up, it should kind of settle down in there. We've got at least 400 frames for it to settle down. So okay, so I'm not gonna have you watch all this. This is kind of boring, so we'll come back and we'll take you through my settings and stuff. We'll go to the next step. Okay, so we're back, and this is what we have so far. Let's go to the side view and check it out. Okay, so they're kind of swarming around in there, and what we're gonna do here is I think we're ready for a Playblast. So I want to be able to see the sphere and the glass at the same time. This is not going to be a full render. Again, it's just going to be a Playblast. So get something that looks like that. And okay, so we're far enough along so we can go ahead and do a Playblast now. So I'm going to click on liquid, and here we're going to turn off particles. We're going to click on voxels. Okay, so let me go ahead and go back to the beginning. Alright, and what we want to do now is we want to run a voxel simulation, and that will be our Playblast. Okay, let's go ahead and set that back. And it might be smart to go ahead, and it's just keeps going and going and going. So I'm going to turn this flush cache, right? Turn this off for a second, and then turn it back on, and let it start from frame 1. There we go. Okay, so now we're good. Once it goes all the way to the end, we've flushed all the cache out. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Playblast. Okay. AVI XVID 100 quality, scale 1.4, everything's set up nicely. I'm not worried about what that name is. I'm going to go to Browse, and I'm going to go to my desktop, and we're going to do another Playblast. So I've done one before. It's going to look the same way, so I'm going to go ahead and get started and show you what it looks like. Okay, it's going to take a long time, so I'm going to hit the F9. We'll come back and see what I got. Alright, so this is kind of what it looks like. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because this is the one I did earlier, and it goes up and over the glass, and we don't want that, so it'll fill up and stop right about there. Alright, so it takes a long time to simulate. Alright, so back to where we were. Okay, so it's still wanting to simulate, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that a minute. I'm going to flush cache. I'm going to just turn that off. Okay, so I'm tired of kind of watching that go past here, just kind of waiting for that. It's like watching paint dry. It's terrible. So with this now, we're going to go ahead and go to the next step. I'm going to show you how to mesh it, because once you got your Playblast, you're pretty happy with what you have, and we're ready to mesh it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start with the BiFrost liquid. See what our settings are for that. Let's go into the attribute editor here. Alright, so right now I don't have any particles or voxels set up. We're going to go ahead and set up our BiFrost meshing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn on the particles. But right now, you can turn that off when you're comfortable and you're happy. But this is what I've got so far. Let's talk about this. Now, these work directly with the liquid particle master voxel size. Okay. Notice that under the BiFrost liquid properties, properties container. Actually, I'm sorry. Properties container that we are set at 0.3. Now we've gone down. That means the voxel size is smaller. It's going to give us a higher resolution. Okay, this will slow things down almost to a point where I couldn't. It would take probably maybe 30 minutes to an hour to simulate all the way through. Okay. And that's really hard to show on, and I have to pause for a long time. So anyway, I'm just going to show you the numbers that I came up with finally, because tweaking it can take hours. Okay, so we'll start with this, and you can tweak from there. Okay, so 0.3, that's really important. I didn't mess with any of the step adaptability, minimum or maximum steps. I left that defaulted. That can really mess with your scene and your scale, so be careful with that if you mess with those. And then we're going to go into the properties. I think it's just the liquid and the container. Those are the two things I really messed with. Okay, with the container. All right. So with that said, let's go back to liquid. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and do a render, or excuse me, a dynamic simulation. So I'm going to turn that back on again. I'm going to flush any cache in there that I don't need. Okay, and to start from the beginning. There we go. And so now we're going to see it kind of run. I'm going to let it run for a little bit. And then I'm going to pause, let it run. Okay, so you can see I've really slowed down. I'm going to go ahead and start it, play, click on play. Okay. So you can see it splashing in there. There's some particles that came out. I don't think you're going to see those in the final render at all. And let's see, while it's rendering out here, I'm going to go up here. I'm going to turn off particles off. Okay. Now you're not going to see anything at this point. Okay. It's still simulating. Alright, so I'm going to stop that frame. And I'm going to go in here and make sure my Arnold settings are all set up. I don't want it that high. I got to set it like render resolution, so I'm going to go back down to 2 on these. Yes, we're going to use the milk material again. So I'm going to go to liquid. BiFrost mesh. Okay. And I think I have AI standard surface material on there. And I believe I've got the milk. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to click on milk and replace that. Here we go. I'm not sure why it's doing what it's doing. Sometimes it has a hard time seeing the liquid because it's so small, but we'll see what happens here. We're at 175. Let's see if it'll render. I need my lights back on, so I'm going to turn my layer with all my lights on. There we go. Okay, I'm going to go from the beginning. And just let it run for a minute. I'll be back. I think I know why I'm not seeing my mesh. Because I don't have enough particles displaying. Max particle display count. Did I go back up to? Yeah, I have it up to 1 million. So it should be okay. We're getting to the mark where it's kind of going to start filling up. So I should see it now. Let me stop it a minute. And let's do a quick render. Okay, you can see the milk. Isn't that weird? You can't see it in the display, the viewport, but you can see it here. Now because the voxel size is smaller, it's making the liquid look more it's making it look soft, but it's also leaving little spots of this open, like open cavities here. That's an issue with not having enough, the voxels being big enough, large enough, okay? So beware of that. So if your simulation looks a little bit strange, it's because of that. I'm not too worried about it, honestly. I'm okay with it. It's going to go so fast you won't even notice that. So let's continue. I'll pause it again. Okay, so at 300, I'm going to stop it a minute. So 300 should have filled up the glass. Let's take a render there and see how that looks. Alright, that looks pretty good. The only thing I don't like about Phoenix FD, and it's really hard to get rid of, is those little bumpies. Looks like curdled milk. I just, it's kind of like the issues we've had with our end particles and the milk. So it's hard to get rid of those, and you have to really tweak and tweak and tweak. At this point, I am okay with what we see here. Okay, so I need a basic render of it pouring in. Okay, alright, so we need to have that, and we need to have a full animation, so you need to get set up for that. So the lighting is all set up. Okay, we took you through that in part 1, so if you need to go back and watch that video and look at my settings, you sure can. Hopefully you can tweak out your own lighting on your own. Okay. By now you should be able to, but if you need to go back and watch the video, feel free. Okay. Now we need to kind of just get everything set up. So I've got my camera bookmark. Well, I guess I don't have any bookmarks, so let me get that set up. And we don't want to see the sphere on top. So you need to select the mask, the resolution gate, and then the gate mask. Make sure that's on. We'll kind of do a corner here. Okay. You can go to the side if you want to, so you can see the shadow. It's up to you, however you want to set this up. We just want the glass in the middle and not see the sphere. That's the idea. Okay, let's go ahead and get that centered. Let's do the field chart, center that up. I think that's pretty close. That looks pretty good. Turn that back off again. And we already know that it's all set up to go. We may need to continue the simulation all the way through, but I think it'll be okay. It will render it no matter what. But we'll run it all the way through. I'll pause it and we'll come back and we'll start. I'll show you how to start the rendering process. Yay, it's done. Okay, so that took a long time. On my machine, which is really fast, and it runs off your video card, I've got a 1080 Ti, and I know that's an older model. It's like 3 or 4 years old, but it's still fast, and it took about 30 minutes to get through there. So don't get, you're just gonna have to let it run. Now the worst thing is, though, I have to have an animation of this. So we looked at the fluid; it looks fine. I'm okay with that little lumpiness. So now what do we do? Okay, so now we got to set up our render settings. Okay, let's do that together. Now the question is, how much quality should you put into this? I'm not really too worried about it, and changing these are going to be kind of a real pain. This is not going to be for your portfolio, so I'm not too worried about seeing some graininess. So I'm okay with the lowest settings, so you guys can get this done as quickly as possible. It'll still probably take all night long for 400 frames. So let's go in here. Well, what are we going to name it? So you probably should put your first name first. So I usually do this. Your first initial, last name, and then underscore, and we do Annie 255, and this will be module 15, and you don't want to have any numbers behind it, so we're just going to put scene here. Okay, scene. You don't want to have a number be the last because it will mess it up. Image format. Let's do JPEG. Now normally I do PNGs for production, but we're not doing production, so let's do JPEG. Quality 100, sure, why not? Now this is really important. So frame animation extension, name number extent. We want to do name number dot extent. Name number dot extent. So your name, then the number dot ext. Okay, that's what we want. That's the second one to the last, right? All right, cool. So basically what we called it here, and at the end of E you'll see the number. So that would be like 001 for the first one. Actually we have 4 spaces. We only need 3. Let's do 3. Let's type in 3 here. So it would basically do .001. Okay? If we had 4 it'd be like .0001. Alright, anyway. So we want start frame at 1 and frame at 400, not 10. So if you forget to do that, you'll render all night long, coming back, and you'll have 10 frames done. Okay, so there we go. You don't want to skip existing frames. You don't want to renumber frames. We want to go from the perspective. That's fine. You're in the window, so make sure you click on somewhere in here. So it's going to render from perspective. Okay. Do you need an alpha mask? No. Presets HT540. That's fine. I know that I usually ask for 1080, but you know what? This is just for a quick test. So let's do 540. Make it faster. I think you're all for that. Render options, do we have anything in here we need to worry about? Nope. So that's it. So now you're all set. Okay? You're all set right here. So what you want to do is you want to save your scene the way it is right now. And you might want to put something behind it, like something like render, right? So you come back to it. So save that. There we go. And we're good. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to rendering. So click on rendering here. And up here you go to render. And then you're going to go to render sequence. Okay? Render sequence, go in here in the option box. Current camera, yes. Perspective. Okay. All render enable layers. All render enable cameras. Render region. Ignore local overrides. Alternative output file location. Otherwise it's going to go in your images folder. Okay, if you set your project or if you created a new project. Add a render view. No, none of that stuff we have to worry about. We just want to render it out. Frames 1 through 400. And then click on render sequence and close. I don't want to do that right now. Okay, even if I did, I could start it and I could hit escape. Okay, that's how you can stop your render if you want to. Okay. Alright, so let me just get it started and show you how I usually run it. So I'm going to go click on render sequence and close. And so it'll show you. Okay, that's kind of how it looks when it's rendering. And you can see how long it's going to take too. You can go down in here to your I don't think Mel will let me open up while it's rendering. When rendering starts, it takes all the resources. I don't know if it'll let me do that. No, it won't. I should have opened it up before. Anyway, you can open up the Mel script editor and it will show you what it's doing. Okay, I'm going to hit escape after it gets done with this render. There we go. Okay, so hopefully it'll stop. It's supposed to stop. There we go. Alright, so let me open that up so you guys can see what it looks like. If you open up that before, it'll tell you what frame it's on, which is kind of cool. Let's go in here. So it tells you what frame you're on. You can see that it's telling you its name and number 1001. So if I bring this into like Premiere Pro, I can click on check box. You know, it's got a little check mark next to sequence images. You click on that, you just click on the first frame, it'll open the whole row of them up and you can put them all into an animation. That's how you do that. Okay. You can use other software too as well. Well, that's it. You'll render out your animation, you'll give me the Playblast, you'll send me the file, and this is all you have to do. Okay, it's not too hard, it's not too rough, it's not nearly as easy as Phoenix FD. So hopefully someday, if you had to do the alternate assignment, that you'll be able to have a chance to use Phoenix FD someday, and I hope you can. Anyway, have a great day and have a great week, and congratulations, you're all finished with all your assignments. All you have to worry about is the final exam, which starts next week, first thing on Monday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. So we'll see you then on the final exam. Have a great day.